There is currently panic in Pakistan after the announcement that was made in India about the Indus Waters Treaty being held in abeyance. Pakistan, of course, takes some time to comprehend these things, to understand these things. And the buzz on the ground in Pakistan is, ab Indus Nadi ka pani ruk jayega, that Pakistan will turn into a desert. That's not what India has said, but Pakistan is panicking. And of course, there are some in Pakistan who say, if India stops the water of the Indus River, it will be seen as an act of war. So Pakistan is also trying to now drum up some nationalism, jingoism and support for Pakistan's Army Chief General Asim Munir, seen more as an Islamist. But that's a separate debate. Joining me now on this India Today special broadcast is Ambassador Yash Sinha, India's former High Commissioner to the United Kingdom, somebody who spent a long time initially as Joint Secretary and then Additional Secretary at the Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran desk at the Ministry of External Affairs. And when Pakistan took this Indus Waters Treaty case to the Permanent Court of Arbitration, he was part of fighting back and ultimately won that case. So, Ambassador Sinha, I want to understand from you and for the benefit of our viewers, sir, what does holding the Indus Waters Treaty in abeyance actually mean? Why is Pakistan in panic?
I think what the government of India has announced is an ultimatum to Pakistan, that unless they switch off the faucet of terrorism, there will be a price to pay. And the Indus Water Treaty, which is the lifeline of Pakistan, 80% of the waters of the Indus water system goes to Pakistan. India was extremely generous as an upper riparian state to allocate so much water to Pakistan. But Pakistan, in return, apart from acts of terrorism, has even blocked every project that India tries to do, which is allowed, which is permissible, the run-of-river projects on the western rivers of the Indus system. And I recall that 2011, 2012, when they took the matter of the Kishan-Ganga hydroelectric project to arbitration, I happened to be the co-agent for India, and we had the redoubtable late Fali Nariman as our lead counsel, and we argued in the arbitration that what we were doing was very much within the four walls of the treaty, and that judgment that came from the court was in our favor. And yet again, Pakistan has now taken this matter, the Kishan-Ganga project, again to arbitration, and of course they've also appointed a very bizarre situation where there's a neutral expert going into this and a court of arbitration also examining it. So I think Pakistan plays a very obstructionist role. Okay. And for us, there is no real merit, no real gain in continuing the charade of adhering to the treaty. But right now, we have just issued a warning, and Pakistan should take it seriously.
So what does this warning truly mean? Clearly, water will continue to flow. If we were to talk about we're an upper riparian state, and we were talking about the western, rivers, Chenab, Jhelum and Indus. Pakistan continues to get 80%. We retain 20%, but we're not even harnessing our 20%. So why is there this panic in Pakistan? Many would argue you can't stop that water. You can't store it. Our own country will get flooded. So is this an empty threat, Ambassador?
No, as far as the western rivers are concerned, we only have run-of-the-river projects. We do not block water from flowing. We do not have that sort of storage capacity. In fact, the dispute that Pakistan, that took us to arbitration was on the issue of the dead storage level and the size of the sluice gates. Now, as far as India is concerned, we have been adhering to the provisions of the treaty, and till now, the various processes of dispute resolution have borne that out. However, the threat that India is making now, as far as the eastern rivers are concerned, we already are using it. Yes. May not be 100%, but you see the Ravi in Lahore, and you'll see that we are utilizing, as per the treaty, the waters of the Ravi, or the Abeyance, or the Sutlej for that matter. Yes. But as far as the western rivers are concerned, if we raise, for instance, just an example, and a hydrological engineer would be able to explain that better than I could, But if you raise the debt storage level or you increase the size of the sluice gates, then you could conceivably store more water than you would probably do in normal course. And obviously to divert waters is a very long-term, expensive exercise, but it's not improbable.
Okay, but if we were to even utilize or not give them extra water or not even share data, would that be detrimental to Pakistan? Because if the treaty is in abeyance, then are we obliged to share data? And if we do not share data, is Pakistan in trouble?
Well, as far as the sharing of data is concerned, particularly during the monsoon, this data is very valuable because it gauges the flow of the rivers, especially the western rivers. And if India stops giving data, then prior flood warnings, etc., would not be easily available to Pakistan. Pakistan must realize the folly of the course of action that they've adopted, because for them, the waters of the Indus and its tributaries are vital. It's self-sustaining, it is important for their agriculture, and I think they must realize that terror cannot go hand in hand with seeking cooperation and the generosity of India as far as the water of the Indus and its tributaries are concerned.
Okay. Now, before I go to some of the scenarios that we are discussing on this special broadcast, especially after what Prime Minister Narendra Modi said, I also want to understand from you, Pakistan says if India were to stop the Indus waters flow to Pakistan, and there is some panic in their country, this would be seen as an act of war. Is there merit in Pakistan's contention, or is India able to send across that message that water for Pakistan cannot be more precious than blood of Indians that Pakistan continues to spill and has been for decades, sir?
This is saber rattling on the part of Pakistan, par for the course for that country. India is not blocking the waters of the Indus or even the western rivers, and India has not done so far, and I don't think the announcement yesterday even hinted that that would happen. However, cooperation under the framework of the treaty is now put on hold. It's held in abeyance. So if we do not share data, if we decide to work on projects like the Kishan Ganga, the Tulbul navigation project on the Jhelum, the Ratle project on the Chenab, we would be well within our rights.
Perhaps, and India has started doing that in many instances since 2019. A warning was issued to Pakistan even in 2019 after the Pulwama terror attack. So Pakistan today cannot turn around and say, you didn't warn us, this is grave escalation. India has repeatedly warned them after Uri, after Pulwama, and now taken some action after the Pahalgam terror attack. Now, what are India's options? Let's now throw this open. Joining me now on this India Today special broadcast is General Deepak Kapoor, former Chief of the Army Staff. General Kapoor, welcome on India Today. You heard Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Bihar where he said, we will track, trace, hunt and punish not just the perpetrators of terror, but also those who back them, those who shield them. What is your appreciation of what the Prime Minister said after the Pahalgam terror attack, sir?
Let me be historically correct to say that since 1947, when India got independence, Pakistan has indulged in 4 adventurous actions in the form of wars in 1965, 48, 65, 71, and 1919 at Kargil. And in all these, it has not succeeded. Having not succeeded militarily in all these wars, Pakistan decided to bleed the Indian army by 1,000 cuts in its own words, and that is how in the year 1989, this action of insurgency supported financially, economically, and militarily by Pakistan started. And for the last 36 years, this terror cycle has seen various ups and downs. And in the ebb and flow of this terror cycle, gradually thanks to the efforts made by India, the situation in Kashmir has been turning towards stability and normalcy. And for the last 5-6 years, since the time on 5th August, the abrogation of Article 370 was announced, gradually the connectivity in Jammu and Kashmir has improved in the form of rail connectivity. Also, linkages across the Pir Panjal range in form of road connectivity have also improved. There is a degree of peace which has prevailed for the last 3 to 4 years in the valley, and we were hopeful that the situation will continue to keep improving. But definitely it was not to the Pakistani army's designs. And that
General,
is how
I want you to listen to Prime Minister Narendra Modi for a moment.
Has been viewed by us when...
Okay, I want you to listen to Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and usually when he speaks in Hindi, it's a message perhaps domestically, but he chose in Bihar to speak English, and I want you to listen into it. What does this mean? What are the implications? And we will then discuss certain scenarios on the basis of what Prime Minister Narendra Modi said. Listen in.
I thank the people of various countries and their leaders who have stood with us in these times. Today, from the soil of Bihar, I say to the whole world, India will identify, track, and punish every terrorist and their backers. We will pursue them to the ends of the earth. India's spirit will never be broken by terrorism. Terrorism will not go unpunished. Every effort will be made to ensure that justice is done. The entire nation is firm in this resolve. Everyone who believes in humanity is with us.
So when Prime Minister Narendra Modi says that आतंक के लिए जो बची कुची जमीन है वो भी खत्म हो जाएगी, नष्ट हो जाएगी, whatever territory remains for terror, whether it's terrorists or their backers, it will be destroyed. General Deepak Kapoor, I want you to consider certain scenarios on the basis of what Prime Minister Narendra Modi indicated. India has already carried out a surgical strike. It's carried out an airstrike in Balakot after Pulwama. I want you to consider scenario one, a missile strike. What could perhaps some of the possible targets be? Of course, the army knows, the armed forces know what to strike. But for example, the better known targets, Jaish-e-Mohammed headquarters in Bahawalpur, Lashkar-e-Taiba headquarters in Muridke, terror launch pads in Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, or if you were to hurt terror backers, what can be hurt, what can be used? Is a missile strike, in your appreciation, a feasible scenario? General Kapoor.
Let me express very frankly, there's no point being speculative on these issues. First and foremost, I'd like to emphasize there has to be a composite, integrated approach towards the response that we have to consider and go ahead with. And to that extent, diplomatically and politically, certain actions have been taken in the form of suspension of the Indus Water Treaty and various other measures which the Government of India have already announced. And Prime Minister Modi is absolutely right when he says that there is no place for terror in the world, and nor in India, nor in Jammu and Kashmir as well. There are a large number of different options which are available to the military, both in a combined, integrated fashion, as well as to the army at the tactical and the strategic level. So those are options which I am sure the Government of India, as well as in consultation with the military hierarchy, would be considering. The option of using missiles or attacking the launch pads or various vulnerable posts those are options which are available. Some of these options were exercised during Balakot as well as the Uri strikes. As to what decision is taken on these, it's a matter of how it will play out, considering the kind of support which is coming in internationally to India for this dastardly terrorist act by the Pakistan army and its handlers who have been responsible for this act of terrorism, where individuals, civilians, have been targeted and killed. So it would be futile to think of different and speculate on different scenarios without all the facts. I think it would be better left to the military hierarchy as well as the government of India to decide on these acts.
Fair enough. Since you mentioned diplomatic options, since you mentioned whole of the nation approach, I want to bring in Ambassador Sinha into this conversation once again. Ambassador Sinha, the fact that India used fighter jets not just to cross the line of control but hit across the international border without declaration of war in 2019, and the next day the Pakistani response, their fighters did not cross over to the Indian side. I want to understand from you, if in 2025 there were to be a missile strike, would that be seen as escalation?
Well, certainly it would, because till now we haven't had missile strikes as far as India and Pakistan goes, particularly when we're not fighting a war. So I think a missile strike would be an escalation. But then I wouldn't like to second guess what the government has planned, because certainly the government will give a muscular response. What that will be, I think we should leave it to our decision makers. I am sanguine that whatever course of action that the government decides, the people of India will unite behind the government in a stiff response to the perpetrators of terror.
Oh, absolutely. I completely agree with you. The fact that terror has to be punished, the fact that Prime Minister said there has to be no territory left for terrorists and their backers. And in your appreciation, Deepak Kapoor, would the Pakistani state or the Pakistani military jihad complex, army, ISI, do they constitute part of terror backers in your appreciation, in India's assessment?
Look, let me be very frank that Pakistan has its own tremendous problems, economic, political, as well as military. As to how much they can support this jihadist elements in carrying on with terrorism in the J&K area is a matter of doubt, because their own economy is in doldrums. As to whether in all this the Pakistan military establishment can continue to retain control of the political landscape within Pakistan is also a question mark. As to how it will play out is a matter of time, notwithstanding that the Indian military as well as the political establishment is quite aware of the realities, and I am sure the kind of action that they propose would take care of the efforts that are being made by Pakistan to use terrorism as a weapon, especially when a tremendous amount of peace and stability was returning to the state of Jammu and Kashmir. They are attempting also to give a kind of support to a religious divide within our country, which I'm sure needs to be resisted with all our might and ensure that terrorism doesn't find a place within our country.
No, but that's the problem with a country like Pakistan and with a chief like Asim Munir in Pakistan, an army chief like Asim Munir. They have no money, they know it, you know it, we know it. But the fact remains they still continue to support terror. The fact remains they still continue to sponsor terror in India. I mean, that's a country that will cut its nose to spite its face. You know that better than anybody else, as does Ambassador Sinha. And which is what brings me to scenario number 2. And considering you spoke of their economic distress, if the Indian Navy were to carry out a series of exercises in the North Arabian Sea or around the Arabian Sea, would that be a nightmare for Pakistan? Because ultimately, that would, in a way, without officially doing that, lead to a blockade of Karachi and Gwadar. So whether it's cargo ships, whether it's oil tankers, either they wouldn't be able to come, or if they do, fuel supply to Pakistan would be impacted. Civilian cargo movement would either be halted, or with increased insurance, it would be much more expensive and unaffordable for a state that's literally living on arms. It's literally living on begged, borrowed, perhaps stolen money. So should we be intensifying naval operations and exercises in the Arabian Sea, in your appreciation, General Deepak Kapoor?
I think we would be indulging in the realm of speculative thinking when we talk about either naval, army, or air force actions. Please remember, there is a composite headquarters, the Integrated Defence Staff, and the Government of India. I'm sure when any steps have to be taken, they will be taken in total consideration of all these factors, whether it is to be combined operation by Air Force, Navy, and the Army, or restricted in certain other spheres, or whether the missiles are to be used. So these are areas which the Government of India and the powers that are currently dealing with the situation will be fully aware of, and they will take an appropriate action. All that I would like to say is that as the country is behind whatever they decide to do, it will be coordinated action, integrated fully, and that will take care of the kind of retaliation that we wish to plan towards Pakistan and its military establishment.
Okay. Ambassador Sinha, if India's effort is to ensure that Pakistan does not have funds for terror, and whatever little funds they have, they've been begging for money from the International Monetary Fund, they've been begging Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, bartering their territory or our territory to China, and yet sponsoring terror. So would squeezing funds out of Pakistan be an option, and should that be an option? And I'm sure that's an option, but what do you make of naval exercises? There's nothing that Pakistan can do. I mean, it's international waters if we were to carry out exercises.
Look, Gaurav, as far as Pakistan is concerned, I have always maintained that it's a sick man of Asia, the sick man of Asia surviving on a drip. And it's not a recent phenomenon. For many years, the benefactors may have changed, but Pakistan's obsessive hatred for India remains the same. So I think squeezing of funds, whatever funds they have, they will deploy against India because of their obsession. And I think the people of Pakistan must realize that their army, their decision makers are leading them down a path of destruction. So I think it's time for the people to ensure that its leadership steps back from the brink.
Okay. I, for a moment, also want to talk about, what Pakistan often describes, General Deepak Kapoor, as Namaloom Afraad or unknown gunmen. We don't know who they are. Pakistan claims they are Indians. We have no idea. Or they claim they're Pakistanis backed by Indians. Again, we have absolutely no idea. But is that working to take out terrorists who may have been involved in actions in Jammu and Kashmir? Because I'm told the intelligence agencies and networks know who all were responsible, whether they were state actors, semi-state actors, non-state actors. I'm told they're all 50 shades of Hafiz Saeed anyways. But what is described often as covert operations, neutralize high-value terror targets or strategic targets in Pakistan, targeted assassinations in Pakistan. Is that something that would deter Pakistan as a terrorist state, or they've gone so down the road that it's like a drug addict? Even though he knows drugs are bad, he can't do anything about it, and Pakistan is addicted to terror. General Kapoor.
I would not like to indulge in speculative thinking, but I'd like to ask you a counter question. Haven't the ISI of Pakistan been trying to invoke trouble of all kinds within our country from time to time? The history over the last 75 years will show that besides the military operation, time and again, the ISI have tried different means to incite communal hatred within our country, which is something which we have stoutly defended against. Yes. So these are covert operations which they've carried out. If they are now speculating about Nabalum killers, well, that's something they are quite familiar with, and what they are familiar with, I suppose they are supposed to be expecting what they have been dealing all along in India with. So if Nabalum killers have done some actions, I suppose it only shows that those Nabalum killers have had the time and the effort to take care of people who have been the hotheads of terrorism, who have been spreading terrorism not only within our country, but across the world.
Oh, absolutely. That's a very pertinent point you make because, Ambassador Sinha, as you know better, Pakistan has, for example, Madeleine Albright described Pakistan as the international terror epicenter. Pakistan anyways is seen as the global terror central. Osama bin Laden found and killed there. David Coleman Headley was Lashkar-e-Taiba's sleeper cell in America. Captain Tahawwur Hussain Rana, who's been extradited to India now, was Lashkar-e-Taiba's sleeper cell in Canada. They carried out or attempted to carry out a terror attack in Europe. So, is the world or can the world unite to target Pakistan's military jihad infrastructure, or is that best left to the victims of terror and currently perhaps India, Afghanistan and certain other countries?
I think the fact that Pakistan is a state sponsor of terrorism is widely known. I mean, right from its inception, it has used the fig leaf of non-state actors, whether it was the tribals, Razakars, 47, 48, in 65 they launched Operation Gibraltar. Yes. In 99, in Kargil, the Northern Light Infantry was involved, but they denied. They refused to take back even their dead bodies. So Pakistan has a history. 26/11, they denied that they were Pakistanis till Qasab, the identity of Qasab was clearly proven. So I think the world knows that Pakistan can hide behind what they consider to be non-state actors, but everyone knows that they are the ones who are sponsoring it. They're sponsoring these acts of terrorism, sponsoring these terrorists. So I think even the attack in Pahalgam was executed with some amount of precision. They certainly would have had support from the Pakistan jihadi complex, the military jihadi complex.
Which brings me to scenario number 4, and something that perhaps already is happening is exposing Pakistan's state support to terror globally. Expose ISI sleeper cells worldwide, like Tahawwur Hussain Rana, like David Coleman Headley, like Ghulam Nabi Fai, that Pakistan ISI operative in the United States of America. Of course, Headley, Tahawwur Rana, Ghulam Nabi Fai, they were all exposed by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Some sources seem to indicate that there was tremendous intelligence cooperation between India and the United States of America. Should India also be lending, Ambassador Sinha, support, diplomatic support, emotional support to the freedom fighters of Balochistan and those Pashtuns, the movement there against Pakistan's atrocities, whether it's in Balochistan or in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa?
As far as India is concerned, India is a responsible state. India is not a state sponsor of terrorism. So India does not behave like Pakistan. And that is why India's credentials are well respected. And that is why today India's ranking or India's standing in the Committee of Nations is so high. So I wouldn't like to go down to the level that Pakistan has stooped. And as far as India is concerned, what is happening in Balochistan, what is happening in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa is an internal matter of Pakistan, yet it does concern every person who loves democracy, freedom rights, and the right to choose. And I think as far as what's happening in Pakistan is concerned, it is a blowback. It's a Frankenstein's monster that is now turning on its creator.
Okay, is that also your appreciation, General Kapoor? We saw what happened at the Jafar Express, the way Pakistan Army is unable to move around openly in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and in Balochistan. Ever since Taliban took over in Afghanistan, Pakistan thought it was Second Freedom Movement or words to that effect. They permitted TTP, Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan fighters to come into their territory, and Pakistan has been bleeding ever since. What do you make of what's happening in Balochistan and in KPK?
Look, Pakistan has been always known to be the fountainhead of terrorism. So when you try and cultivate terrorists, the possibility as to some or a large number of them would turn against you for their own benefits and gains is very strong and is bound to happen at some stage or the other. So if trouble for Pakistan is happening in Balochistan or in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa or along the Pakistan-Afghanistan border, it is primarily those very terrorists who it has trained who are turning their back onto Pakistan establishment, military establishment, and showing their fangs to the Pakistan military as well as the administration. Of course, there is also the fact that there is a very strong movement within Balochistan for its independence from Pakistan, because they feel that they have been absolutely cheated as far as their resources are concerned. They have been taken for a ride by the dominant community within Pakistan, that is the Punjabi elite, and that is why there is literally a rebellion within Balochistan to have an independent state of their own. Likewise, the other provinces of Pakistan, whether it is Sindh or Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, also feel the domination of the Punjabi elites in almost all departments and functions of the government. So there is a degree of resentment which is already existing as to how Pakistan can stay away from the acts of terrorism for these very people is a matter of time, and gradually it is bound to show at some stage or the other in the next
Which brings me to
years.
our question number 5. Has the ceasefire along the line of control held India in good stead? Is that helping Pakistan better? Is it better that the Pakistan army remains stretched not just along the Durand line, along the AFPAC border, but also along the line of control? So 770 kilometers of the LC, 200 kilometers of the international border, and 110 kilometers of the actual ground position line. The Pakistan army was able to shift considerable resources and take them along the AFPAC border, virtually 2,700 odd kilometers, to fight there. Is it better if the Pakistan army is stretched on all borders and internally? General Deepak Kapoor, in your appreciation, sir.
Yes, you are right. The Pakistan army is stretched to a large extent, starting from Balochistan, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border, and now they have taken on themselves along the India-Pakistan ceasefire line as well. Well, as far as international agreements go, I'm sure the Indian side would absolutely stick to the agreements which have been done in the past, but should there be any violations all along the line of control, I have no doubt the Indian military, the Army, Navy and the Air Force will give them a befitting response. Notwithstanding that, the condition and plight within the military establishment of Pakistan is actually rather insecure and sensitive, especially because there is an element, especially amongst the younger ranks of the Pakistan military, who are more close to the Imran side of politics than to the present dispensation. And that is something which is a major cause of concern for the Pakistan hierarchy, because a kind of a rebellion at the lower ranks can be a major source of problem for them in the future as well.
Fair enough, because the more Pakistan army bleeds, the less it will have the capacity to bleed India and Indians. It does not want peace with India, and clearly not when it has a radical Islamist as the chief of their army, General Asim Munir. General Deepak Kapoor and Ambassador Sinha for joining me here on this India Today special broadcast. Many thanks, gentlemen.